My wife is cheating on me. Having read her diary, which she hid poorly from me, I found out that right now she is cheating on me. John Smith is an average American guy, a hard-working electrician who loves a good challenge and takes pride in a job well done. He lives in a cozy house with his wife, Emily, in a quiet town. Emily and John have been married for 8 years. Emily is a smart, driven woman, a sociology professor at the local university. Their life together has been pretty good, with plans, dreams, laughter, and disagreements. Recently, things started to feel off. It was around 6 p.m. on a Wednesday when John finally walked through the front door. He had stayed late at work to wrap up a wiring project handed to him by his supervisor, David Brown. Despite the aching muscles, he finished the job almost half a day ahead of schedule. Emily had left for a 3-day seminar in Columbus that morning, leaving John the house to himself and the chance to focus entirely on work. Initially, John had wanted to go with her, but they had a spring break cruise planned, and the tickets were proudly displayed in their china cabinet as a reminder of better times ahead. Not finding a message from Emily about her safe arrival, John felt uneasy and decided to give her a call using the home phone. She picked up after just 2 rings, sounding unusually happy to hear from him, and mentioned she was just about to call. John joked about her mind-reading ability and asked about her journey. Emily reassured him that everything was fine, the traffic was light, and she found the hotel easily, thanks to the map he had printed for her. Reflecting on their earlier conversation, John still felt a bit stung from her firm refusal to let him join her on the trip. She had wanted to wait until spring break for a trip together. John, masking his disappointment with a laugh, promised to be good and stay home. The relief in Emily's voice was evident as she described her busy week ahead with presentations and dinners, but promised they would have Saturday evening together. After hanging up, John went downstairs, his mind swirling with thoughts of Emily's recent behavior. She had been acting strangely for months, and her rejection of his joke about joining her on the trip didn't help. Hungry and distracted, he ordered a pizza. With about 40 minutes to spare until it arrived, he changed out of his work uniform, grabbed a beer, and settled down at the kitchen table. His job kept him fit, so he didn't worry about indulging in pizza, especially since Emily wasn't a fan. Leftovers would be lunch tomorrow. John tried to focus on a news program on TV, but kept thinking about Emily and her odd behavior. Emily, 35, was tall and slender with long, dark hair and piercing eyes. As a sociology professor, she was proud of her accomplishments and often spoke of her heavy workload. Thankfully, she had a teaching assistant, Tom, a senior who helped with grading and advising. Tom's name used to come up a lot, but lately, not so much. Back in November, she had mentioned seminars over the New Year break and seemed open to John joining her, but 2 weeks later she changed her mind, preferring a spring break trip instead. Reluctantly, John accepted her decision. Over Christmas, they didn't talk about seminars, enjoying the holidays with family and friends instead. Emily received envelopes with training materials, quickly sent back her registration, and started packing well before New Year's Eve, her organized nature shining through. Later that evening, John went back to the bedroom, planning to pick up a book he had left on the bedside table. He noticed Emily's travel bag and moved it to its usual spot in the closet, spotting her journal underneath. Married for 8 years, John rarely saw her diary, which she kept well hidden. Once he had jokingly asked to read it, but she firmly refused, calling it personal and private. They never brought it up again, and in all their years together he had only glimpsed it a couple of times before she quickly locked it away. John suspected she wrote in it, either at her college office or at home while he was at work. Their schedules rarely aligned. She was home when he left and left when he returned. Curious about her recent odd behavior, John picked up the journal instead of putting it back. The 6x8-inch red leather book, about an inch thick, had a brass lock and latch. John wondered if it held any clues to what was going on with Emily. Instead of returning it to the dresser, he took it downstairs to the brighter kitchen. Examining it closely, he saw that only about a third of the pages were used, meaning it couldn't possibly hold 8 years' worth of entries. There had to be older volumes. Realizing she might have more diaries hidden somewhere, John guessed her closet was the best place to look. They each had their own, and he had never explored hers. Heading upstairs, he searched for about 5 minutes before finding a shoebox on the top shelf containing a stack of red leather diaries. He returned to the kitchen with his find. Each diary had a small white sticker on the spine numbered 1 through 6, while the current one was unnumbered. Embossed on the back cover of each was the name of a local specialty store. All 7 locks were identical with no distinguishing marks. Knowing it was wrong but unable to help himself, John had to know what was in those journals. Maybe they held the answers to why Emily had been acting so strange lately. Sitting at the kitchen table with the stack of diaries in front of him, John took a deep breath. It was time to find out the truth. He couldn't shake the thought that all the diaries might use the same key. Curiosity got the better of him, so he grabbed the phone book and quickly found the number for the specialty store. It was around 8:35 p.m., and he hoped they were still open since many downtown stores stayed open late on Wednesdays. After 2 rings, a young woman answered. John inquired about red leather diaries around 6x8 inches, saying he wanted to buy one as a gift. The woman checked and confirmed they had 2 in stock and that the store was open until 10 p.m. John wasted no time heading there, hoping to get a diary and maybe a key to unlock Emily's. The chances were slim, but he knew trying to force the lock could damage it and earn him Emily's wrath. In less than half an hour, he was on his way home with a red leather diary and a key in his bag. Despite the $60 cost, John considered it a small price to pay to uncover what was troubling his wife. He thought about giving the new diary to Emily as a birthday present, imagining various scenarios. Emily had a habit of keeping things from John, like the time she concealed an abnormal Pap test result. John wondered if she might be hiding another health scare or dealing with workplace issues. A darker possibility gnawed at him, the idea that Emily might be having an affair. John pushed the thought away, unwilling to believe it. Despite their physical differences, John was shorter with blonde hair and blue eyes. While Emily was tall and slender, they had known each other since high school. They dated briefly, then parted ways. John became an electrician's apprentice, and Emily went on to college. They reunited there and quickly got married after her graduation. Now a master electrician, John had bought a home and they were planning to upgrade to a bigger house and start a family. They decided Emily would stop taking birth control pills by the end of the school year. Back home, John examined the new diary's key. It came in a small envelope inside the diary box, but it looked too small to fit the lock on Emily's journal. John realized he should have asked the store clerk about the key compatibility. If it didn't fit, he'd have to give up the idea of unlocking her diary, rather than hunt for Emily's hidden keys. Minutes later, John sat at the kitchen table with a stack of diaries in front of him. He wrestled with the decision of whether to try the key on Emily's current journal. His worry for her well-being and relentless curiosity pushed him forward, but he hesitated, fearing he'd violate her trust. Ultimately, he couldn't resist. To his surprise, the key fit perfectly. As he flipped through the pages, John found her recent entries dated just the previous day. Scanning her neat handwriting, his face went pale and tears filled his eyes. He moved to the kitchen sink, squeezing his soda can until it overflowed onto his arm. Noticing the mess, he cleaned up and retreated to the living room. He placed the diaries on the end table, turned on the lamp, and settled into his chair, bracing himself to uncover the truth about his wife and their life together. Instead of starting from the most recent entry, John decided to read the diaries in chronological order, hoping to find answers. Confronting Emily at the hotel crossed his mind, but he dismissed it, fearing an emotional breakdown. The first page, dated early June, began John's journey through Emily's thoughts. Despite entries expressing contentment with her life, career, and marriage, none from the summer months explained the shocking revelation he had read on the last page. But by early September, John found a crucial entry that hinted at the answers he sought. He read it twice to be sure. On September 8th, Emily wrote about meeting her new teaching assistant, Tom Johnson. She described him as slightly taller than her, with black hair, dark eyes, and a short beard, noting his impressive qualifications. John searched for more mentions of Tom, but found none in the following entries. Emily seemed content but a bit anxious about handling a large class of over 100 students. By September 15th, she detailed how Tom helped her manage the class, answering students' questions while she prepared lecture materials. She noted that her female students seemed to like him, comparing him to a young Leonardo DiCaprio. As John read further, Tom's name appeared more frequently, making him scrutinize the passages closely. On September 20th, Emily mentioned that classes were going as usual, with a few students dropping out due to difficulty. She observed Tom watching her during lectures from the front row and planned to give him more responsibilities. By September 24th, Emily wrote about working on a reading assignment when Tom visited her office to help. She also mentioned wanting to discuss having children with John, marking the first time this topic appeared in her diary. By September 30th, Emily noticed Tom's constant attention during lectures despite her disapproving glances. Female students flocked to him with questions, showing more interest in him than in her. Despite this, Emily was pleased with her students' progress and the pressures of being a full professor. Subsequent entries didn't mention Tom, leaving John with more questions than answers. Emily had been optimistic about her classes and told John she wanted to discuss their plans to start a family after her first year as a full professor. She aimed for them to start trying for a baby at the end of the school year. On October 8th, Emily excitedly shared this decision with Tom. His supportive reaction led to an unexpected hug in her office, though she quickly reminded him to be mindful of their professional setting. On October 10th, Emily felt uneasy when Tom locked her office door during a visit, but he unlocked it when she asked. His brief stay left her questioning his intentions. The next day, Tom returned to help her, expressing a preference for mature women and apologizing for the previous day's behavior. Although she was happily married, Emily found his attention flattering and was intrigued by his interest in her over the younger women at the college. By October 13th, Emily was looking forward to Tom's visits, but she felt disappointed when he didn't show up. She wanted to delve deeper into his comments about mature women. 2 days later, she hoped Tom would stay after the students left her office, but he left before she could engage in conversation. On October 16th, she finally had a chance to speak with Tom, who explained that his preference for mature women came from past experiences. She regretted not setting clearer boundaries and was troubled by the encounter. Reading this entry made John's stomach churn. Emily's reaction wasn't what he had expected. He left the diary open and grabbed a new can of soda before returning to read more about the situation with Tom. On October 20th, just before leaving work, Tom barged into Emily's office and ignored her request to leave the door open. He confessed he had been thinking about her constantly and asked for a longer kiss, claiming it was his birthday. Feeling uneasy, Emily agreed to get rid of him. Later, she realized his birthday was in July and felt tricked, but laughed it off. She was worried about his intentions and resolved to be more cautious around him. The next entry showed that Tom was absent, as Emily focused on grading tests and essays. John found it odd that he wasn't around, but the journal didn't explain his absence. On October 30th, Emily wrote about a difficult encounter with Tom, where he locked the door behind him and pulled her toward him before she could protest. She felt ashamed for not stopping him sooner, and when she finally pushed him away, he insisted she enjoyed it. Despite her distress, Emily composed herself before John came home, hiding her feelings. Seething with anger, John reviewed the entry repeatedly, focusing on the incident with Tom. Despite this, he noted a lack of mentions regarding Tom or their relationship in Emily's diary for the following week, which gave him some relief. On November 17th, Emily wrote about confronting Tom about their previous encounters, stressing how inappropriate it was given her marriage and their professional relationship. Despite her firm stance, Tom suggested they lock the office door and invited her to sit with him on the couch. For reasons she couldn't explain, she agreed, crossing a dangerous line and feeling torn between wanting to fire him and justifying their actions. Determined to understand Emily's actions, John continued reading. It was already 2 a.m., but he couldn't have put the diary down. He left a message at work saying he'd be unavailable due to personal reasons. His life felt turned upside down, with love and hope replaced by emptiness and anger. He finished his soda and returned to the living room, his mind racing with everything he'd read. Just 8 hours ago, he was chatting with Emily, completely oblivious to what was happening. On November 22nd, Emily wrote about keeping her distance from Tom and maintaining professionalism. Her upbeat mood as the semester ended seemed like a cruel joke. By November 23rd, she had told John about the seminars, and he was supportive, even offering to go with her. Things shifted dramatically from November 23rd to mid-December. On November 25th, Tom visited her office again, wanting to come to their home. She firmly said no and emphasized it wasn't an option. Despite his persistence, he acted interested in the seminars, even though they were faculty only. John couldn't understand why Emily acted this way. It was so unlike her. On December 3rd, she wrote about Tom cornering her in the hallway, asking her to reconsider meeting him at his place. He wanted to be close to her in a real bed, but she refused, reminding him of the risks to her marriage and career. He didn't give up, suggesting he come to the January seminars, even offering to pay his own way if she'd spend nights with him. She rejected him, but his words stuck with her, making her question her strength. Seething with anger, John took a break to calm down. He resisted the urge to drink, needing to think clearly. He knew he needed a solid plan. Back in the living room, he continued reading. On December 7th, Tom stopped by Emily's office to say goodbye before his Christmas trip. He asked if he could come back early for the seminar, suggesting she could use it as a distraction. Emily told him to call her in a few days. On December 8th, she wrote about lying to John, convincing him to stay home while she attended a seminar. She suggested a cruise to distract him. He was hesitant, but eventually agreed. Emily felt terrible about deceiving him, but hadn't decided if she'd take Tom with her. She kept reflecting on their last encounter in her office, wondering if Tom would keep pushing or give up. On December 12th, Tom called again, wanting to join Emily in Columbus. He suggested they book adjoining rooms and pretend he was her brother. He planned to confirm tomorrow and cover the costs. Emily felt guilty but made the reservation. On December 14th, she wrote about Tom calling again, excited about their stay at the hotel. He was leaving after the spring semester, so he wouldn't be her teaching assistant anymore. Emily hoped she could resist the temptation, but was intrigued by something about Tom that she had never felt before. She was terrified of John finding out, knowing it would destroy him. On December 28th, Tom called Emily at home using a fake name in case John answered. He confirmed their plans for New Year's Eve, and she reluctantly agreed. Deep down, she felt a thrill and hoped the encounter would end their affair for good. John had to work, giving her the chance to make arrangements. She had never spent consecutive nights with another man since marrying John, but she decided to go along with Tom's plan, hoping it would disrupt her feelings for him. John couldn't believe how drastically his life had changed overnight. The love and trust he had felt for Emily were now buried under a mountain of betrayal and anger. He was nearing the end of Emily's diaries, but felt compelled to read every single page. Although he knew she hadn't physically cheated yet, he needed to be absolutely certain. Leaving the last page unread for now, he got up to make some coffee, knowing he could rest later. On January 3rd, Emily wrote about her plans for the next few days. She was off for 3 days of seminars and nights with Tom. She planned to pick him up before leaving town and drop him off afterward. Thankfully, John didn't insist on coming along. Emily discovered a Victoria's Secret nearby and planned to buy outfits to wear for Tom. She felt uneasy but planned to wash them before seeing John. She forgot to remind Tom about contraceptives but figured they could stop by the pharmacy before checking in. Emily was surprisingly excited but worried about Tom expecting new things. She decided to save any new experiences for their cruise, framing it as an adventure. Emily started packing, hoping John wouldn't suspect anything. Finishing the 7th journal, John sat there stunned by what he'd read over the past 9 hours. A plan began forming in his mind for the next 3 days. Even if Emily backed out of her arrangement with Tom, their marriage was over. The trust was gone, and forgiveness seemed impossible. John's love for Emily was quickly being replaced by a burning animosity toward Tom. Before noon, he called a number he had found online. A professional tone greeted him from Davis Investigations. John inquired about their services, explaining his situation. He suspected his wife was having an affair with a man at the Sheraton Hotel near the airport and wanted photographic evidence. The investigator, Mike Davis, confirmed they could handle the case, quoting a price for the surveillance. John agreed and provided the necessary details, including names and descriptions. Davis assured him the cameras would be set up in the rooms that afternoon. John made the payment and arranged to receive the photos by email. Exhausted, he finally allowed himself to succumb to sleep. After a nap and a quick meal, he resumed reading Emily's diaries, progressing quickly without pausing to overthink. As he finished the first volume, Emily called shortly before 10 p.m. Their conversation was smooth, both hiding their secrets. With everything arranged, John felt a strange sense of calm, though he doubted he'd ever regain a sense of normalcy. Before diving into the second volume, John double-checked his arrangements. Friday held additional tasks, including a visit to the bank to sort out finances. He had already resigned from Anderson Electric and was awaiting his final paycheck. It was well past 1 a.m. when he finished the second volume, taking longer than expected as thoughts of Emily and Tom haunted him. Exhausted, John lay down on the couch and, to his surprise, fell asleep, waking up at 7 a.m. Refreshed, he decided to dive back into the diaries, starting the third volume. By noon, he had finished the third and fourth volumes, setting them aside, knowing it was time to tackle his to-do list. John's first stop was Anderson Electric to collect his final paycheck and clear out his locker. Gus Anderson, the owner, tried to convince him to stay but saw the resolve in his eyes and reluctantly bid him farewell. The paperwork at the bank took longer than expected, but John eventually walked out with a bag containing over $20,000 withdrawn from their joint and personal accounts. Though he had hoped for more, immediate funds were all he could access without Emily's signature. John got home around 4 p.m. and checked the answering machine. There was a message from Davis Investigations. Taking a deep breath, he dialed Mike Davis' direct line and inquired about the findings. Davis confirmed they had set up cameras in both rooms and reviewed the footage, revealing that John's suspicions were confirmed. Emily and Tom spent the night together and were intimate multiple times. Davis offered to email the photos as requested. John felt the weight of the evidence as he viewed the photos, making the affair tangible. He printed the photos on 8x10 photo paper, holding them in his hands. The photo of Emily and Tom lying together under a sheet bothered him the most, marking a turning point for him emotionally. After a final look at the photos, John placed them in a brown envelope on the kitchen table. Returning to his chair, John resumed reading the fifth diary. Just before midnight, he concluded the last 2 volumes of Emily's journals, reflecting on the contents. He realized how closely Emily had adhered to his perceptions of her, revealing numerous insights into their past. Despite her professed love for him, her actions with Tom were confusing. The biggest revelation was that their initial meeting at a birthday party wasn't a coincidence. Emily had orchestrated the encounter, eager to reconnect with John. Engrossed in the reading, John hadn't realized how late it was. Emily hadn't called, and he was starving. He made himself a sandwich and a drink, but thoughts of Emily and Tom's interactions consumed him. These thoughts, along with his decision to end the marriage, kept him restless throughout the night. Whether it was the food or the vivid images of Emily and Tom in his mind, John couldn't find peace. At 7:00 a.m., he gave up trying to sleep and got up to start his meticulously planned day. With a packed agenda ahead, he needed an early start. By 8:30 a.m., John phoned his closest surviving relative, his brother James. They weren't estranged, but their interactions were infrequent, usually limited to obligatory holiday gatherings. Just 2 weeks earlier, James, his wife Anna, and their children Ethan and Lily had visited. James was surprised by John's unexpected morning call, but made time for him. They engaged in conversation until slightly past 1,000 a.m., then John headed to his home. The children were eager to resume their activities, and as Anna brewed fresh coffee, James and John sat at the table reflecting on their recent Christmas gathering. Remembering James and his family's plans for a Disneyland trip during spring break, John handed each of James's kids a crisp 100 bill. Their smiles and hugs were a small comfort. James expressed surprise and gratitude for John's generosity, acknowledging the kids' excitement. John gave a faint smile and assured him it wasn't due to winning the lottery, but just a kind gesture. They continued to sip coffee and make small talk, with Anna eventually joining them. She mentioned Emily's plans and their intentions of starting a family, which John acknowledged with a pang of sadness. Shifting the conversation to James' work at the restaurant, they finished their coffee. After the cups were empty, John stood up to leave. wishing them well and shaking hands. Walking to his car, he wondered about James and Anna's thoughts. They speculated about his preoccupation, attributing it to waiting for Emily's return from her seminar. Just before 6 in the evening, Emily arrived home, noticing John wasn't there. She felt a mix of relief and disappointment, having rehearsed their reunion in her mind. She began unpacking and doing laundry, finding a note from John explaining his unexpected work departure. Although disappointed, she continued with her plans, heading upstairs for a relaxing bath. While gathering the laundry, she found her journal on the dresser, relieved to see it untouched. Emily retrieved it, planning to update it while the laundry washed. As her clothes washed, Emily made a quick meal and tried calling John, only to realize his phone was in the wicker basket. She sighed, knowing she wouldn't get an answer. Returning to the table, she unlocked her diary with the key from her wallet and began writing about the past few days, expressing her feelings and experiences. Finishing her lengthy journal entry, Emily left the book on the table and headed upstairs to prepare a bath. She brought the cordless phone along in case John called, filled the tub with warm water, and added bath oil and candles. Trying to relax, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She glanced around but saw no one, resuming her relaxation and pondering how to mend things with John after her involvement with Tom. An hour later, feeling slightly better, Emily got out of the bath and prepared for bed, her mind still swirling with thoughts of how to fix the mess she had made. She returned to the kitchen, transferring the laundry to the dryer. She noticed the pen she had used as a bookmark was missing, but found it near the wicker basket. Opening her diary, she reread her entry and reflected on her actions. Sunday morning, Emily woke up feeling refreshed and ready to start anew. She spent the morning cleaning, took a long shower, and dressed in an outfit John always liked. By mid-afternoon, she was sitting at the kitchen table enjoying a cup of coffee while a roast cooked in the oven. Her peaceful afternoon was interrupted by a knock at the side door. Seeing 2 burly men outside, one in a police uniform and the other in a suit holding a police ID, her surprise quickly turned to alarm. Introducing themselves as Detective Wilson and Officer Taylor from the Springfield Police Department, they asked if John was home. Emily, trying to mask her unease, explained John was at work and offered to help. They asked to come inside, and Emily led them into the kitchen. Detective Wilson inquired about John's whereabouts, and Emily showed him the note John had left. The detective then mentioned a homicide report traced to John's cell phone, causing Emily relief and confusion. Detective Wilson asked to see John's cell phone, and Emily realized it was missing from the wicker basket. She insisted it was there last night, causing the detective to doubt her. They questioned her about Tom Johnson, her former teaching assistant, and whether John knew him. Emily explained that John had never met Tom, feeling panic rise. The detective revealed evidence of a struggle involving Tom at an address provided by John, with signs of a fight and Tom being dragged to the kitchen, tied with nylon straps, and shot. Emily, shocked, insisted John couldn't have done it. The detective mentioned John's gun permit and matching bullet, tentatively linking the weapon to the scene. Detective Wilson placed photocopies of photos found at the crime scene, suggesting Tom was shown them before his death. Emily examined the photos, her expression shifting from shock to horror. She began to sob uncontrollably, insisting John couldn't have known. The detective's cell phone rang and he received an update revealing John's call was traced to Windsor, Ontario. Authorities found his device with credit cards and a pistol registered to him, discarded in a trash bin. John's car plates were also found, suggesting he swapped them to blend in with traffic. The news didn't console Emily, who remained inconsolable. Detective Wilson showed her a key found at the scene, and Emily recognized it, retrieving a matching key from her purse. Realizing it was for her diary, she collapsed, muttering John's name. The officers stayed with her until she called her sister for support. Walking to their cars, Officer Taylor asked about the likelihood of catching John. Detective Wilson explained it depended on John's ability to stay hidden and the prioritization of his search by Canadian authorities. They discussed the possibility of using TV publicity if John remained undetected for 6 months. Taylor speculated about Emily's realization of her close call with losing her life and how she would feel about it. Emily sat in her kitchen, tears streaming down her face, feeling the weight of the revelations. She couldn't fathom how her life had spiraled so quickly into chaos. The detective's words echoed in her mind, painting a picture of a man she thought she knew intimately, but who now seemed a stranger. Detective Wilson and Officer Taylor walked to their cars, discussing the case. Taylor speculated about Emily's realization of her close call with losing her life and how she would feel about it. They agreed it would be a difficult and painful process for her, understanding the gravity of her situation. Inside, Emily struggled to regain composure. Her sister arrived soon after, finding Emily in a state of shock and confusion. The two sat together, Emily attempting to explain the events while her sister listened, offering comfort and support. Meanwhile, John was miles away, hiding in a small motel room in Windsor, Ontario. His thoughts raced as he tried to piece together his next move. He knew he couldn't stay hidden forever, and the weight of his actions pressed heavily on him. The guilt of what he had done to Tom and the realization of his marriage's demise weighed him down. John had crossed a line he never thought he would. The confrontation with Tom had escalated beyond control, leading to a tragic and irreversible outcome. Now he was on the run, constantly looking over his shoulder, knowing the authorities would be closing in on him. Days turned into weeks, and the initial media frenzy over Tom's murder began to fade. John managed to stay under the radar, moving from one place to another, avoiding any contact that might lead to his capture. He lived a life of paranoia and fear, always one step ahead of the law. Back in Springfield, Emily tried to rebuild her life. The investigation into Tom's murder continued, with the police piecing together the events leading up to his death. Emily's involvement was scrutinized, but without concrete evidence linking her to the crime, the focus remained on finding John. Emily's colleagues at the university offered their support, although many were curious about the scandal that had unfolded. Emily threw herself into her work, trying to find solace in her teaching and research. She attended therapy, attempting to understand her own actions and the dynamics that had led to her affair with Tom. Months passed, and Emily began to find a semblance of normalcy. She decided to move forward with her life, filing for divorce from John and selling their home. The process was painful, but it was necessary for her to start anew. Emily's relationship with her family grew stronger as they rallied around her during this difficult time. Her sister remained a constant support, helping her navigate the challenges and offering a shoulder to lean on. John, on the other hand, continued to live a life of uncertainty. The guilt and regret gnawed at him daily. He knew he couldn't hide forever, and the burden of his actions became too much to bear. One morning, after months of running, John walked into a local police station in a small town in Ontario, surrendering himself to the authorities. The news of John's surrender reached Springfield quickly. Emily felt a mix of emotions, relief that he had finally been found, but also a profound sadness for the man she had once loved. She knew their lives would never be the same. John's trial was a long and grueling process. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and he was eventually convicted of Tom's murder. He received a lengthy prison sentence with little hope of parole. Emily continued to rebuild her life, finding strength in her work and her relationships. She realized that despite the pain and betrayal, she had a chance to start over and create a new future for herself. Years passed, and the scars of the past slowly began to heal. Emily became a respected figure at the university, her research and teaching earning her accolades and respect. She learned to forgive herself for the mistakes she had made and to find peace in the knowledge that she had done her best to move forward. John remained in prison, grappling with the consequences of his actions. The letters he received from Emily were a lifeline, a reminder that despite everything, there was still a connection between them, however fragile. In the end, both John and Emily found their own paths to redemption. Emily built a life of purpose and fulfillment, while John faced the reality of his choices, finding solace in the hope that one day he might be forgiven. Their story, marked by tragedy and loss, became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the possibility of finding light even in the darkest of times.